Okay, so I'm going to pick up where we left off on Wednesday. We were talking about imminent health hazards in the restaurant. We're looking at water service interruption if water is not available for some reason, if there is broken water lines, or the system is contaminated. Then we have to use water from approved reputable supplier. Some alternate suppliers are buying bottled water. They have water tanker trucks that transport safe water. You can use the so-called emergency menu where you don't have food that needs to be boiled or has water in the recipes. You can use pre-washed, packaged, frozen produce, canned vegetables. You can only thaw food in a cooler or microwave as part of the cooking process. So you can't thaw food under the cold running water method. You don't have water, then you're not going to be able to make ice. So you need to have a source of approved safe ice. And there are companies around that can supply that. After you have a water service interruption, equipment, utensils, and the facility cannot be cleaned or sanitized. So you would want to switch over to single-use items. So guests would not be eating off of your regular plates and utensils and cups. They would be using disposable items. And then boiled water, or not, bottled water, water from approved source. That's what you're going to have to use to clean and sanitize. If beverages with water cannot be prepared because the water isn't safe, stop using like your drink machines because those things are hooked up directly to water lines. Anything that requires water, coffee makers, your iced tea brewer, you're not going to be able to use anything like that. Everything would have to come out of bottles or cans. So after the interruption, you need to clean and sanitize equipment that has water line connections. So your ice makers or any of your coolers that dispense cool water, you would have to clean those things out. Flush the lines as required by the regulatory authority, and then work with the regulatory authority to go ahead and resume normal operations. For a fire, you want to have emergency contact information. Typically, you're going to call 911 and report that you need the fire department. And they'll make sure that everybody needed is contacted. I would not call the health department because you have a fire. It's a safety issue first. After you have the situation under control, when you would contact the health authority. And then your owner, depending on the size of your company, there's somebody further up the chain that needs to know about what happened. Post the fire department number by each phone. Again, it's a 911 call for this area and for most areas. We do have in our kitchens a little blue box that connects to campus security that you can call in the event of a fire, but safety, it comes first. So if it's that serious, you need to get out of the building and somebody can call with their cell phone. Recovering from a fire, throughout food that has been affected by the fire, throughout anything that was damaged, any type of equipment, utensils, linens, any items that cannot be cleaned and sanitized. And then clean and sanitize the operation. There are services out there designed to clean up operations after a fire. You want to check all your water lines, make sure you don't have any leaks, because the heat from the fire could have caused lines to burst. In the case of a flood, have a plan to monitor and maintain flood control equipment. Some type of plumbing installation. The way that ours works is that we are hooked up to the city sewage unit, but we also have a collection pond in the back for runoff water that comes off of the building so that it doesn't come into the building. It's designed to go back into that holding area before it goes into the drains that run along the highway. Have emergency contact information, keep a supply of bottled water. If you have flooding inside your building, you're going to have to close because that's contaminated water and you're not going to be able to work in that safely. So if a water line leaks or water builds up on the floor, but food, utensils, etc. are not affected, keep people away from the wet floor, get the leak repaired, block off the areas that are affected by this type of flooding. So if you have a water line burst in the wall in your kitchen, it's not contaminated water like sewage water backing up through your pipes would be, or flood water would be. If flood affects or damages food, utensils, etc., you need to stop all operations. So occasionally at the Beau Rivage, even though it was built over the water, the floor drains led out toward the back of the property. Oftentimes those would get clogged up, and then wherever the water was coming from, it would back up into the kitchen, which is a big problem because that is definitely unsanitary water that's coming out of there. So we would have to stop what we were doing. Somebody would have to find the blockage and fix that. And then we would have to use some bleach water to go ahead and mop every area and wipe down anything that would have gotten wet from that. So that's the two examples there. Okay, recovering from a flood, throw out everything that was damaged. Any food or food packaging that made contact with the water. You need to clean it and sanitize everything if needed. Hire a janitorial service. So we did that here. We didn't necessarily have flood waters in the building, but we did have water coming through the roof. And mold was thrown in the kitchen. So everything that could went through the sanitizing dishwasher, and then we had the company come in a couple of times and remediate for mold in all of the kitchens. And then students still went back and looked for more sources of mold within the kitchens and took care of that. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 8. And then we're going into chapter 9, which is about pest control. So this portion is on integrated pest management. So an integrated pest management program has several components to it. The the first is that we're going to use prevention measures to keep pests from entering the operation. Then we'll also use control measures to eliminate any pests that do get inside. And then we have to work with a licensed pest control operator. You have a restaurant, you do not apply pesticides and traps for rodents. Okay, so the three basic rules: deny pests access to the operation. Once they get in, make sure they don't have anywhere to access your food, water, or to build a nest. And then thirdly, work with a licensed pest control operator. So you see PCO, and that may be on the exam as PCO, and might not type out pest control operator. So denying access, use approved reputable suppliers. Make sure if you are receiving food and supplies, you're checking for possible infestation. You don't want to receive anything that does have signs of pests. So like this is clearly a sign that something could have been chewing on this. It might still be inside. Entering through doors, windows, and vents. Any window that opens, you need to have screens on it that has a small enough mesh to keep insects out. Same thing if you have vents. Any of the doors that open into this building have automatic closing doors behind them, so that minimizes the amount of pests that could get in while the door is open. You want to make sure you look for any kind of damage to the doors, the door frames, and thresholds. Anything that's really damaged outside of your building to provide a way for pests to get inside. Use weather stripping on the bottoms of doors that don't have thresholds. Install air curtains above or alongside doors. And have we talked about air curtains before? Okay. It's a device. If this were the door in front of me here, there's an electric device located on top. When you open the door, it triggers that to blow air straight down and creates an air curtain that would keep insects from being able to fly in. So it's a very powerful fan, basically. Keep all exterior openings tightly closed so we don't pop doors open to the outside. Pests can also enter through pipes or holes around pipes. So like this has been repaired because there was a hole around this pipe. If you have ventilation pipes on the roof of your building, you want to have screens over them so critters can't get down in through that. Same thing with your ducts. Floor drains need to be covered with hinged grates to keep rodents from crawling up the sewage pipe and coming into your building. Cracks in the walls, even little hairline cracks, will need to be repaired. Permanent sealant has to be used. Stationary equipment, if you have something like a cooler inside the kitchen and it's sealed to the floor, you've got to double check that that it's tightly fitted to the floor. There's no cracks or places where a rodent could get into. Denying pests food and shelter. There's a lot of things that we have to look at. Fill out the garbage quickly and correctly. Correctly means that it's in a garbage bag, you tie off the garbage bag, take it outside and put it into a container that has a lid on it, and that lid stays closed. Need to maintain garbage containers and your storage areas. So we've got a couple of trash cans in here that are roughly the size of what we might have in a kitchen. So we need to take care of those things. They need to be washed outside away from the kitchen, food truck areas. We have to make sure that somebody doesn't take the can with the garbage in it and drag it across the concrete or the parking lot and wear away the bottom of the garbage can. Any spills around containers need to be cleaned up immediately because that's just an attraction for pests to come. Recyclables, you need to store your recyclables correctly. They should be outside, away from the building, as far as you can legally store them, and stored in a closed container. Store your food and supplies quickly and correctly. So everything has to be inside a container that is airtight. So you can't get insects getting into it or rodents getting into it. I've used the example of a bag of sugar. It could be a bag of flour. It could be a bag of cake mix. If you open that up and you just leave that bag sitting on the counter, anything can go into it. You have to transfer it to a good container. Also, rotation is very important. We use first in, first out. I've seen some places where that didn't happen. In the old building that we used to have here, there was a storage room and it had something on the top shelf that nobody could reach. I grabbed it to look at it, and it was above it on the ceiling tile. There was a hole in the ceiling tile where rodents had crawled, made a hole through, and went down, and kind of like we got home and a buffet out of that, whatever that ingredient was. So good cleaning practices. Clean up food and beverage spills immediately. Of course, you do a routine cleaning every day, but if something spills, you need to get that cleaned up quickly. Clean toilets and restrooms often as needed. Train staff to keep lockers and break areas clean. Your staff, if they have lockers, they can't store things in there that could attract pests, like half-eaten candy bars and that kind of stuff. Something that's open and is a source of food for pests. Keep your cleaning tools and supplies clean and dry. So the health department and other people are going to look for a wet mop that's hanging or leaning against the wall with a wet mop down on the floor. That has to be hung up off of the floor. Empty water from buckets to keep from attracting rodents, because rodents will be looking for a source of water as well. Outdoor dining areas or just around your restaurant, you have to maintain the grounds, make sure the grass is mowed, pull the weeds, get rid of standing water, pick up litter. Those kind of things attract pests. Cover all outdoor garbage containers. Remove uneaten food and dirty dishes from tables. If you have tables outside, because you will attract pests, anything from birds to rodents and insects. Clean any spills quickly as possible. Don't have bird feeders outside near your property, or wildlife feeders, because that's going to attract also rodents. And the closer they are to your building, the more chance there is they're going to look their way into your building. Install electronic insect eliminators or zappers away from food, customers, and staff in serving areas. So maybe like in a storage area, or if we have a back hallway here that guests never go to, we could consider putting in these electronic zappers. But you don't want to do that in the kitchen or in a dining room. Call your pest control operator to remove hives and nests. So identifying pests. Flies feed on garbage and animal waste. There's a bacteria that we have to be concerned about if we see flies in the operation. It's one of the big six. Begins with SHI. Shigella. Okay, that's a question that they would ask, like controlling flies in your operation is going to help you prevent Shigella. Cockroaches often carry pathogens. This is what's called a German cockroach. They're much more common up north in cooler weather. And if you see one, there are hundreds or thousands of them in your building. They're not like the palmetto bugs down here where you may have just one or one or two. These things live in big groups. So if you see them, first of all, they don't like light. So you will never see them during the daytime. It's usually at night when you come in and turn on the lights that you might see one. They like places that are dark, warm, moist, and hard to clean. If you do see them in the daylight, you may have a major infestation, and that can be a huge, huge problem. Signs of cockroach infestation include a strong, oily odor, droppings that look like grains of black pepper. So these critters are much smaller than the palmetto bugs that we have. It's been a long time, like not longer than an inch for sure. And they're skinnier and they don't fly. They have capsule-shaped egg cases. They might be brown or dark red or black, leathery, smooth, or shiny. So and you'll see clusters of egg cases whenever they lay eggs. Rodents have several qualities. One of them is that they urinate and defecate as they move around. So one thing that you can do to check for rodents is use a black light, turn off the lights, use a black light, and run it along the side of your wall and see if there's any reflections that would indicate urine, because it will show up under black light. Typically, they hide during the day, and they stay relatively close to their nests. These guys can squeeze through really small holes. They can jump and they can climb. So any type of shelving that we have, they can climb it. And if they're in the ceiling, they can jump down onto the racks that way as well. The holes, they can fit through some really small holes. I have some videos somewhere where people tried have like plexiglass with a hole filled in and food on the other side. And once they convince the rat that that food was good, they could squeeze through holes somewhere between the size of a nickel and a quarter. So it's not difficult. And the way that they do it is that as long as they can get their head through, they're able to collapse their rib cage and kind of like fold in on itself. So probably can get their whole body through that little hole. They know how to avoid bait and some traps. Signs of rodent infestation includes gnaw marks, and that's because rodents' teeth continue to grow throughout their life. So if they get too long, they can't eat. So they have to gnaw on wood, usually, in order to keep their teeth filed down. Droppings, if they're fresh, they're shiny and black. They're a little bit smaller than a raisin. Shiny and black when they're fresh, gray when they're old. Urine stains you can look for with black lights. Dirt tracks along walls. So if you notice, like in your food areas, that there's like a nasty kind of a dirty area, because that's what they do is work around the perimeters of a room. They're not going to go out into the middle of a room, and they don't bathe, so they're going to just make marks against your walls. Their nests can be made from cloth, hair, feathers, grass, scraps of paper, usually in holes or in quiet spaces, often near food and water, and they may be outside of your building, but they might have an easy way into your building, so they don't necessarily have to move inside the building. So working with your pest control operator, things that they're going to do, they're going to develop an integrated approach to pest management. It's their job to stay current on new equipment and products. So they're going to know what is going to be the best tool if you have rodents or roaches or flies or any other kind of pest. They're going to keep, they're going to provide prompt service. So like as soon as you see evidence, either rodent droppings, any of the signs that we talked about, contact the pest control operator and they'll start attacking the problem. And then they'll also keep records of all the steps taken to prevent and control pests in the operation. Several years ago, something happened over the summer, and especially when they started harvesting cane in the fields back here, all of a sudden we had mice in the building. And it wasn't just in one part of the building, they were in faculty offices and kitchens and storage areas. And it took a good 6 months of work to get them out of the building. So that was, it wasn't like there were hundreds of them in here. It was like there was a handful that were really crafty about getting around. Before you choose a pest control operator, check their references. For restaurants, there's a restaurant association, so you can talk to the members of the restaurant association, find out who they recommend. Make sure that the pest control operator is licensed if that's required by your state. Okay. You want to have a written contract with the pest control operator outlining what work is to be performed. Typically includes the following: a description of services to be provided. So that might include like routine spraying, like once a month they'll come in and spray for pests. What period of service? Your contract might cover a year, or it might be a 5-year contract. Um, your duties as the owner of the operation, what you're going to do to maintain the security of your building and keep pests from getting in, and preparing your facility before treatment, and then doing cleanup after treatment. So if somebody's spraying pesticides in your kitchens, you typically cover everything up with cloths before they come in. You uncover it, wash the cloths, like linens, like bed sheets or something like that, or tablecloths. You get all of those laundered and then clean and sanitize the kitchen before we start doing prep work. The pest control operator needs to keep the records. Okay, so they'll do routine inspections of your facility, looking for signs of pests. So they need complete access to the building. Your staff should be comfortable answering questions from the pest control operator. Have you seen any rodents? If y'all do see like a rodent in this building, please let us know. Provide building plans and equipment layouts. Point out possible trouble spots. Then when the building first went up, there is the baseboard in this room is not of kitchen quality. We call it coving in the kitchen, and it's like the tile material. It's the same material as the tile material, and it is mortared onto the wall, and there's no cracks in it. But when I looked behind some equipment, I found some places where it wasn't mortared, and that's a big red flag as far as pests are concerned. So you have to watch out and inspect your own place, especially a new place. Make sure that that was taken care of. Treatment plan, treatments used for each area or problem and the potential risks. Dates and times of each treatment. Staff should not be on site during the treatment. For the homes that I worked at in Pittsburgh, the company would come in on a Saturday night and we were closed on Sundays. So everybody in the kitchen knew that it was, once a month on that Saturday night. They provided all the linens for you to cover everything up in the kitchen, and that's how you closed up on Saturday night. Steps that you can take to control pests. So keeping things clean, organized, do routine spot checks to see if you have evidence. Correct your building defects and increase your ability to prevent and control pests. Work out on a follow-up visit. Like if there is something that's more serious, like you do have mice in the building, like they should be coming more than once a month to follow up on that. That's a problem that you really want to try to get rid of as quickly as possible. The control methods should be environmentally sound. So you don't want to be using chemicals that it could harm people. They need to be effective for pests in your area, which again is another reason to use a pest control operator. Reasons not to do this yourself. If you don't know the correct amount to apply, it can be either ineffective or harmful if it's applied incorrectly. Pests can develop resistance and immunity to pesticides. So it's the job of the pest control operator to know which chemicals are going to work and which ones are not effective. Control measures may vary by regions of the country. If we have a totally different, or they have up in Pennsylvania, a totally different kind of pest roach problem than we do down here. I don't think I've ever seen a German roach in this area, but I'm sure they're around somewhere. Some pesticides are not approved for use in restaurants or food service operations. When they will be applied, I said, wait till you're closed for business and the staff is not present. Remove food and movable food contact surfaces. Cover equipment and food contact surfaces that can't be moved. Some of your larger equipment, like in a pastry kitchen, some of the mixers are so large you can't move them, so you just throw a cloth over them. Wash, rinse, sanitize food contact surfaces after it's been sprayed. Have a safety data sheet for any pesticide that is used or stored on the premises. And has anybody ever heard of OSHA? Occupational Safety and Hazards Administration. They have rules in place of what information has to be included in the safety data sheets in case it comes in contact with a person's skin or eyes, or they inhale it, what type of actions need to be taken. If you are storing pesticides in the premises, keep them in their original containers. Store them in a secure location away from food, utensils, and equipment. You definitely do not want to have a blank spray bottle and just put pesticides in it and go around spraying it. Would be very dangerous. To dispose of pesticides, you're going to want to check local regulations and follow manufacturer's directions. I think that was our last one for this. Okay, I knew there's more to cover on this in another chapter, but we'll go ahead and pick up on that on Monday. We'll be talking about the specifics for plumbing safety. And if we have time, I will bring in some of those rodent videos. So have a good weekend.